What is going on? I want to welcome you from half court and holy, 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 dude, what the heck is happening today, man? I'm your host, Sean Murphy, alongside Jeff Iafrady. What the is going on, brother?
We've been waiting for this. I mean, I have for a big trade. I mean, you had the Rudy Gobert trade, but come on, like this, it's big time. It's Donovan Mitchell, man.
We were waiting for a big trade. We didn't know what we were waiting for, though, because this was not the Woj bomb that I was expecting. Now, today, if you were not aware, somehow living under a rock or are not on the app Twitter, Adrian Wojnarowski dropped the bomb of bombs at 3:33 p.m. Woj tweeted, "The Cleveland Cavaliers have acquired Donovan Mitchell in a trade." Donovan Mitchell is going to Cleveland alongside Evan Mobley, Darius Garland, Jarrett Allen, Jeff.
Yeah.
Holy dude, this is insane.
No, yeah. In my opinion, it's a win for the Cavs. I mean, you get Donovan Mitchell, who is a clear-cut upgrade over Colin Sexton. I like Colin Sexton, but this takes the Cavs into I think, another conversation. I'm not going to sit here and say they're contenders, but what a good move by them. I mean, this is what they've been building for. Like, you collect all these young assets, you make the postseason, but now you want to take the next step, and they go out and they get Donovan Mitchell, the big fish. The Knicks fumbled the bag, which, I'm not going to sit here and crap on the Knicks, but they deserve to at least get mentioned. They fumbled the bag, and they waited too long, and Kobe Altman came in there like a soaring eagle and swooped Donovan Mitchell right out of Utah. So, man, if you're a Cavs fan, you're excited. But if you're a Pistons fan, I got to address us real quick because I know.
Oh, we're getting. We got to talk about that. My
okay,
friend.
all right. I'm gonna save it. And we'll get into it. But the initial trade reaction, good for the Cavaliers, man. Great for them.
Yeah, for sure.
And the East is stacked. The East is even more stacked.
Yeah, I think this is one of those trades, though, Jeff, where you kind of go, "Wow, both sides won." Like because you look at the Utah Jazz. And in their perspective, you get Colin Sexton, a dynamic young guard, a guy who can come in, has shown that he has some upside, really plays hard on both sides of the ball. You have a guy in Lauri Markkanen, who was a former lottery pick, guy who played really important minutes for Cleveland this last year and actually was an important role for them. So that's not an insignificant trade for them to make. And in addition, you look at 3 future firsts, 2 pick swaps, so about 5 total picks that you're dealing with some form of transaction there. And it's a significant haul, but when you look at the risk that you're taking, it's calculated, right? Because this is the best roster that Donovan Mitchell's ever played on already. And they still have room to grow. And let me just read to you this tweet from Hoop Central earlier, which showed a really good point. This is the lineup that the Cleveland Cavaliers are going to be dealing with. Just to name, they got Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Isaac Okoro, Evan Mobley, Jarrett Allen, Karis LeVert, and Kevin Love. That's their top 7. They still have Karis LeVert, which was the guy that they brought in to pair alongside Darius Garland at the last trade deadline. Mm-hmm. And then they said that we're going to go get Donovan Mitchell. And now you have Karis LeVert and Kevin Love, perhaps the best 6th and 7th man combo that in the league right now.
Yep.
And you look at Evan Mobley, if he can take the next step as a defender and be that anchor like Jarrett Allen already has been, you might not only have one of the best defensive front courts in the league, but one of the best offensive backcourts in the league as well. So that's like when you're like, all right, well, what's the vision? You see the vision. Like, this could be really good.
Yeah, and those guys are still getting better. Darius Garland, Evan Mobley, like they haven't even really hit technically their primes yet. And Donovan Mitchell, we know how much of a superstar he is. But and you can look at the backcourt, and I said this to you. We called right away when this trade happened, and I was like, listen, if you look at that backcourt alone, they're not very good defensively, but my God, if they can offensively, those two, and I'm a big fan of Darius Garland. I think he's going to be a terrific player. those two are going to do damage. And then you have Evan Mobley, who's arguably the best young big man in the league with his skill set, what he can do at 6'11", 7 foot tall. Listen, I mean, as a Pistons fan who's in the East, I'm like, dang, the Cavs are a team now that are, again, I mean, they go from a team who we said we did our podcast. We talked about them. They're going to make the playoffs. Maybe they're 4th, 5th, 6th seed, somewhere in the middle. My God, Sean, like this team's going to be top of the East, in my opinion. East is very tough, but if they can click and they can gel early, they're dangerous and they're deep, like you said.
Yeah. Now, Jeff, you and I started as Pistons fans, but now have the responsibility of covering the Pistons for Woodward Sports. And so, obviously we're very plugged in. We keep an analytical view. And obviously, most times when you're looking at a trade, you go, all right, well, how does this affect Cleveland? How does this affect Utah? We'll get to Utah in a minute because on Pistons Twitter today, after this trade happened, it was like, oh my God, this guy is falling.
That's how it was.
And I was like, dude, guys, let's calm it down a little bit because I get it. The Cleveland Cavaliers are going to be better for a long time.
Right.
First of all, assuming they keep this core together. We'll get to that in a second. But also, I would make the case that even though they made this trade, I still think they could very much end up in the same seed this upcoming year as they could have, even if they didn't make the trade, because that's how deep the Eastern Conference is. Even if they improve, even if they're more dynamic, let's just look at the top of the East and let's look at some of the teams that they're going to have to contend against. You have the Brooklyn Nets, who, even though they were a laughingstock, a lot of things are going on, they're going to be better this year than they were last year. Ben Simmons on the court is still a good player to have. They went and got guys like Royce O'Neal, improved and bolstered their roster around. Kevin Durant is going to have something to say about all the talk around him. I have a feeling they're going to have something to say. The Philadelphia 76ers could possibly end up as the first seed in the Eastern Conference again. Look at teams like the Boston Celtics, who just made it to the finals. The Toronto Raptors always outperform where they're supposed to be. So I'm looking at this Eastern Conference and I'm looking at Cleveland. I could see a scenario, Jeff, where they could be the 2nd seed this year. I could see a scenario where they could be the 7th seed this year. That's how deep the Eastern Conference is. So even though as a Pistons fan, it's all right, or even as someone that covers the Pistons, yes, the Central Division is now the deepest division in basketball. We're there. In my opinion, we're there. But in addition, I just think that first of all, you have to be confident what you're building yourselves, because we have a good nucleus of players as well and plenty of talent. And I would still argue that in the long term, a Cade Ivy backcourt is still on par with a Mitchell Garland backcourt. So listen, I get it's scary or I get it's intimidating, but if anything, I was even just texting Ashton and even wondering his thoughts. We welcome the competition, baby. Let's go. So
no, and that's the difference, I think, between guys like Ashton, who's close with Cade, understands his mindset, and us fans who just our initial reaction to seeing a trade like this, especially like you said, we're in the Central Division. We compete with the Cavs. That's a team that's kind of on the same pace, a little further in the process, but we've always kind of compared ourselves to the Cavs over the last 2 years or so. Now seeing this, I had to sit there for a second. I was shocked, but the reality is, this is what the Cavs had to do, and this is what the Pistons will do, I think, when the time's right. When the right player's available, like this season, Troy's basically saying, okay, let's see what we can do with this young core. If you suck, that's fine. If you guys contend for the play-in, that's fine. Whatever happens, I'm okay with it. He's never, I mean, if Donovan Mitchell was available and Troy Weaver, I'm just saying a player like Donovan Mitchell because we have Jaden Ivey, but if a player like Donovan Mitchell was available, you don't think if Troy felt like we were ready, he'd be in those conversations? You're damn right he would. That's the reality of it. So as Pistons fans or any fans of any team in the East, you get this. This is what the Cavs had to do. I respect it. They're taking the next step, trying to be a formidable team that could make the NBA Finals. But this is the first step of a team. You realize what you have in your young core, and you go out and get a veteran, or at least a semi-veteran. So listen, the Pistons are going to have their time to do it. And I think, Troy, we always say it. When is the big fish coming? I think it'll be next off season, if not next into the season. It's just a year too early. So. Just to all fans overreacting about this, we got to just give the Cavaliers some credit here for going out in the Utah Jazz. They found a perfect trade partner. They got what they wanted. So it's a win-win, and you move on with your business. The East is too tough, man, to worry about just Donovan Mitchell and the Cavs. You got to worry about a lot of other teams as well.
Yeah. Now, Jeff, should this change the trajectory of what Pistons fans should expect from the team this season? I personally think no,
No,
because even
no,
though I get it, like you're still not in a place where you're going to be like going to realistically compete in the playoffs or realistically compete for a championship. I'm not even saying that I'm not even saying that it's likely that we're going to make the play in.
right.
However, I still think that just like Cleveland, no one expected much of them last year either. And that
Mhm.
team outperformed their expectations. They took a leap and played really competitive basketball. Even though they didn't end up where they started at in the year and they still didn't make the playoffs at the end of the year, it was still a successful season. And it was something that they saw that they could build upon. And now, because of that, they went and made the trade for Donovan Mitchell. And that's why for the Pistons, when you're saying, oh, well, why wouldn't they just tank and go get Victor Wembanyama to pair with Cade? Well, the reason why is because you want to see this team, this young players, these assets that you've been getting for about 3 years now, get better, take the next step, so that you can go and get a guy next to Cade, both a good guy in the draft next year, but also feel confident enough to take that $60+ million in cap space you're going to have next offseason. You're not going to pull the trigger on going to get someone next to Cade unless you actually see something on the court that says, all right, it's time we go and pull the trigger and build around. That's why Cleveland made this trade, because they saw what Darius Garland, Jarrett Allen, Evan Mobley could do. We need to see Jaden Ivey, Cade Cunningham, and Sadiq Bey do that exact same thing for us to be in this same position next year.
And you said it, 3 years, and talk about 3-4 years. That's when they drafted Colin Sexton in 2018. They take him eighth overall. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the reality. Also for Cavalier fans, yes, they got a great player in Donovan Mitchell, but you traded away one of your former draft picks, and that's we're not there yet. There's going to be a time where there's going to be a big time player available, and Troy's going to have to make a tough decision. You either trade, I don't want to get into trade scenarios, but you're going to have to let go of somebody that your fans are either like or don't want to leave. But then you get a player like Donovan Mitchell. So, and like you said, in my opinion, it's a year too early. As a GM, you're supposed to see what you have in your basketball team. Like Kobe Altman saw last year. Okay, this team can make the postseason, but we got to get better. Like we're not there yet. I mean, we haven't even made the play in, let alone the
Right.
playoffs. So once we take those steps, like you said, I'd much rather do it earlier. So I'm with you, Sean. You want to go out this year, and I don't think they'll do it, but you want to get there quicker. You don't want. I'm not going to sit here and say lose a bunch of games, but that's where they're going. And I think in about a year or two they'll get there. So
Yeah,
just be
but you want to
patient.
see the team at least take the next step, though, right? Like, it's not
Absolutely.
saying that they need to be in the playoffs, but it's saying, okay, well, what does it look like to at least push for a plan? What does it look like to at least
Competitive basketball.
yeah, exactly. What does it look like to have a reason to still be playing games in March and April? That's all you can ask for from this team this year.
Yeah. It's
And if
good
you
for
see
building
that,
culture too.
yeah, which even then, let's look at another team that made a similar type of move a couple years ago. The Phoenix Suns, when they went and traded for Chris Paul.
Mhm.
Their moment wasn't even making the playoffs. Their moment was going undefeated in the bubble. And even though they still didn't make it at the end of it, not even to the play in, that was something that they saw, okay, we can build on this. So just saying, yeah, let's go lose a ton of games this year doesn't make any sense, because wins, even if they're not for championships, can still lead to foundations of winning habits in the future, cultures and expectations. And also, let's be honest, teams that tend to win more often and build
Yep.
habits of winning more often. So I don't buy into this narrative that like you just want to keep tanking as many years as possible just to keep getting talent, just to get the best talent around Cade, because I still think you can get a pretty damn good roster around Cade without tanking.
Especially if you feel like you have enough talent as it is. Like
Mhm.
I don't know who said it, was either Dwayne or Troy coming out like we can't stack all these first round picks and just continuously keep getting picks. Like eventually you're gonna have to say, all right, I feel like this core is good enough. We just need a piece,
Right.
just one piece to go out and get that guy. So whether that's next year or the year after, they're going to get there, and you have the superstar like the Cleveland Cavaliers feel they have already or will have with Evan Mobley, and they have a guy Darius Garland who is a star. He's a stud, and I feel like the Pistons are kind of on that same trajectory. Like we know we have a superstar with Cade. Now is Jaden Ivey going to be a superstar? We'll see. I think so. We both agree there. And then Sadiq maybe becomes a really good piece. Then you can make a decision. You know what? This team's ready, and we can go out and go fork up multiple first round picks and do it. because you're trading your future away because you're banking on getting to the postseason, having success. So we're not there yet. You don't want to trade your
Yep.
future away because we might still suck, but we're going to be competitive,
Yeah.
not purposely suck.
Yeah. And you know what? Even then, I still think it's good to have, even though it's going to be a challenge, because in this division, you're going to have to face Giannis, Chris
Yeah.
Middleton, Drew Holiday, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Lonzo Ball, Tyrese Halliburton, Benedict Mathurin, and then also Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, Jared Allen, and Evan Mobley. All of those guys
Tough division.
4 times a year apiece. So it's going to be tough. It's not going to be an easy thing at all. But I would just say we got to see something competitive out of that. We can't see. I don't think if the Pistons get swept in all of those games, I think that's something disappointing. I think you want to see them compete and hold their own in those competitions. Yeah. So now, in my opinion, it's just another storyline for the team this year. It's a hurdle that they're going to have to face, but I think it's something that can also be good for their long-term development. But let's talk real quick before we end this video about the other team that was in the trade, the Utah Jazz. How we would normally have a trade conversation. Let's look at there was a tweet made by Legion Hoops earlier today that pointed out the amount of assets just from 2 players the Utah Jazz have gotten this summer. They flipped Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell into Colin Sexton, Malik Beasley, Leandro Bellarmo, Ochet, 14th pick, 22nd pick, Jared Vanderbilt, Lauri Markkanen, THT, Stanley Johnson, 7 first-round picks, and 3 pick swaps.
Wow, is that the worst team on paper in the NBA?
Oh, they're gonna be a terrible team, but like, I mean, listen, there's talent here.
And like, no, there's some guys. I like Sexton.
Listen, there's a couple guys in here that you like. I'm not saying this is like an incredible list. This isn't really what it's about. Like Sexton, great. THT, good value.
It's those at the bottom.
It's what's right here. Yep. It's all those mother picks. This is now an Oklahoma City type situation of the amount of picks that they're going to have. And you know who's leading it? Danny Ainge, a.k.a. the architect of the Boston Celtics team that we just saw in the finals this last year. So, you know, a guy that was able to find guys like Robert Williams, Marcus Smart, Grant Williams, you know, deep in drafts, you know, no biggie, you know, just so I know that we're looking at Cleveland and they won today. Don't get me wrong. But Jeff, there's a world that Donovan Mitchell doesn't stay beyond those 2 years in Cleveland. And if he walks, there's 3 unprotected first-round picks of Cleveland's in their disposal. I'm not saying like this is like automatically going to happen, but like even if they don't convey, it's still good value. And even if that like doesn't happen, but like Jeff, if it does, we could be looking at a Brooklyn, Boston, like Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce trade all over again.
No, absolutely. And I think one thing too, and I don't think the Cavaliers will be, you know, a top 3 team. I guess the lottery, I guess, but top 3 of the worst teams in the NBA if Donovan Mitchell leaves, because you're expecting Evan Mobley to be that dude by then, and maybe
right.
Other
but
guys
you never know what happens after Donovan Mitchell asks out, though.
Absolutely, and I think one thing also is regardless of where they pick, like if you have the right guy in place, and you just went through some guys that Danny Ainge was able to find late in drafts, like we found Sadiq at 16, we found Isaiah, which is crazy, Isaiah Stewart at 19. So you never know. Like if you pick 20, you know, to 20th Jordan Poole, last pick of the first round, like you could still get good players in the draft. And if they have, you know, Danny Ainge, we know what he can bring. So I think the Utah Jazz are on the right track. And listen, just keep swinging, keep taking players, because eventually they're going to hit. That's how the math works. So Danny Ainge is the right person to be driving the ship right now. And the Utah Jazz, you listen, as much as bad as that roster looks right now, it's like OKC. At least OKC has the core and they have the assets, but Utah Jazz, they're going to be able to build the core, man, in the next couple of years.
Well, and here's one more piece of it. And I mentioned this to you right before we recorded. There are 2 teams in the NBA, in my opinion, that if I were looking at trade destinations of whose first-round picks do I want, there are 3 teams that come to mind. The New York Knicks, the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Minnesota Timberwolves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Danny Ainge made trades with two of them this offseason. And from Cleveland, got 3 unprotected picks. From Minnesota, got multiple picks with either no protections or limited protections. And even though these rosters, in theory, look like they both could be competitive for years to come, and it looks like there's reasons to be optimistic and reasons to believe that they might not have the misfortunes of their past, they're still the Timberwolves and they're still the Cleveland Cavaliers. And so,
and Sean, you can also trade those picks too.
Exactly. You can also trade those picks. So like Danny Ainge can make his own luck. But Jeff, the point is, you gotta look at, even though, like, obviously, again, you're looking on paper, this is a great trade for Cleveland. This is a great trade for Utah, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Jeff, when you look at trades, you can't just look at what was on paper. You got to look at the dance partners, man. And Danny Ainge is knowing exactly who he's trading Donovan Mitchell to and what he's getting in return.
And that's why when we got that Bucks first round pick that we didn't know initially would be flipped for Duren, we were like, damn, it's the Bucks pick. Like we knew what to expect from that point on. And it's the same case for every team. If you have Detroit's pick right now, you know for a fact right now this team's going to suck. So it's hard to predict for the future for Minnesota and the Cleveland Cavaliers. But what I will say is, like, crazy. I've seen crazier stuff happen. I've seen cores break up in a couple of years. So we'll see. The future, you don't know. And I guess that goes in Utah's favor and Oklahoma City as well.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. At the end of the day, you don't know who wins the trade until in hindsight, right? Like, hindsight's 2020. We would all be amazing GMs if we got to work in hindsight, right? But what I would say is that this is one of those trades where there are a lot of scenarios where they both end up winning, where both sides end up being victorious on this trade. And so this feels like a very significant moment in the NBA world. And it very much is. And with that, we want to know what your thoughts are on it. What do you think of this trade? What do you think of the Central Division, how the Pistons are going to be comparing? And quite frankly, do you think this changes the trajectory of the Pistons this season? Also, do you think Cleveland now has the best backcourt in our division? Let us know in the comment section down below. But also, be sure you're subscribing to From Half Court for more basketball content and all things Pistons coverage. But with that, we want to thank you all so much for tuning in. We will catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure to subscribe.
Do it.